start the presentation. Okay, so when we're looking at tracking attainment and progress, I'll just wait for my slide to catch up. There are sort of 5 stages in which that data tends to be used in a school and or in a trust. So we're looking at the actual assessment, the putting in the data, the input of data by teachers. That may be formative or summative, it might be test results, it might be something more pastoral in terms of an attitude to learning, a readiness to learn, an effort grade. We then need to look at those marks in terms of the performance of the class and of various groups within that class. So as a class teacher, I should be able to know which of my children are pupil premium, which have an SCND need, and be able to talk about how they've worked, what progress they've made. And then we might want to take that into a pupil progress meeting so we can discuss various pupils, work out what they need, what interventions might be put in place to help those. We then might need to take that data out of the system and present it in some way to other people, such as the governors, to look at 3-year trends, to look at cohorts which might need extra support, and we probably need to report to the parents themselves about the data. So there's that sort of 5 sort of stages of how we use the data. I've also added the 2 little blue boxes in. We might want to think about how we can analyse our statutory data, our Key Stage 1, our phonics, our early years, and more in trusts, we're looking at aggregating that data over into a dashboard which might represent the whole of the trust. So I'll have a look at trying to do a fair amount of that in this session. Again, just a very quick, why do this in SIMS? Well, for most of you, that would mean no additional license costs. SIMS assessment is there. It's part of the core package that most of our schools have, and hopefully your teachers are already logging on to register pupils. It therefore cross-matches with all contextual data, so where you've put in your pupil premium data, your attendance data, SEND data, that will allow you to cross-match against those. And as I said, it's one system where all those phases, the input, the analysis, the discussion, reporting and presentation come in. So somebody's got their microphone on. Would you be able to just turn that off? It's creating a little bit of feedback from my end. Thank you. Key stage data is in SIMS so that you can do your statutory returns at Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 early years, and therefore that can also be cross-referenced with the current performance of a child. And as I said, there's formative and summative assessment in there, and that can be just straight out of the box using something which Capital provided as part of their standard setup, or it can be more bespoke for your school. So this is where I do have slides, but let's go into SIMS and look at this live in SIMS rather than playing the slides. Slides there if I need them to go back into. So just logged into SIMS. I'm a class teacher. I've got a year 2 group. And I want to do, first of all, I'm going to look at the formative assessment. This is what's Capita provide out of the box and allows you to track pupils down to the individual strands from the programs of study. This is the icon at the top. I'm just going to come into that. I'm going to choose the year group I'm assessing, and I might come over and choose my class. Once I've chosen my registration group, it will remember that throughout the rest of the academic year. So that's the very first thing I do. I'm going to put some assessments in for English reading, and we've just done a series of tasks on comprehension, and we're in the autumn term. So once I've set that up, I click populate, and I end up with my program. Just going to vary rows because they take up a fair amount of room at the bottom. And I'm going to ignore the grey columns for the minute. I'm going to just focus on the green columns. So I've got my children down the left-hand side. If I wish to do a formative assessment and look at individual elements, I can, and I can go through and for each strand within a particular topic or module, I can go through and I can put in grades. So I'm just doing that with a little clicking the cell, selecting a grade, and then I'm just putting in the grades, double clicking, and it's automatically putting those in. I can flood fill in Sims, so if I wanted just to put in that everybody was already secure in a particular element, I can, and I can go back and manually type in the D for developing, the E for emerging, or the M for mastery or greater depth into the system. So this is set up, it's there. These are exactly the same as they are in the Programme of Study documents issued from the Department of Education. They haven't been altered in any way, but they can be customized. There is a tool which would allow me to go in and to change the language in here to be the language we're using in our scheme of work. I can also set up subjects totally from scratch if I so wished. So I've done a curriculum for a group of schools who wanted to look at a particular subject in a different way. We've set that up for them. Okay. At the moment, I haven't saved anything, so all my little boxes are a lozenge shape with grey corners. When I save that, that becomes a solid block of colour. So I can very quickly see where I have children who need a little bit more work on a particular element of a task and revisit that. On the left-hand side, I've got the percentage of school expectations. So with there being 15 comprehension strands in the Year 2 programme of study, at the moment, you can see that my children are secure in about 13%. That's dynamic. As soon as I add in other grades, that increases to reflect what I've put in. So I can see where a child is, wherever, whether they're where I would like them to be in terms of their achievement. In Sims, all columns can be assessment, all columns can become filters. So I could go back, revisit a topic, and just filter this on the children who were developing and emerging. Just filter that whole list, just so I can think how I need to reinforce with these children the elements which they didn't quite get first time round. And as we say, we've got all 15, so I can work my way across. I can narrow it down so I can see things a little bit more on one screen. I can, as I said, flood fill. And that's as straightforward as it is for the input phase. On the left-hand side, in the grey, these are more a summative judgment based on what's been going on. Again, out of the box from Capita, this allows me to put in a grade. You can see there's already grades in there, but they've got this sort of half-shaded grey element. I can now go back into here and say, well, actually, my child at the moment is working on the Year 2 curriculum. They are at mastery level in all elements I've assessed. So at the moment, I'm going to put them down as a 2M. So this is using the paradigm of the year group followed by a grade. And again, I can look at what I've recorded in the formative side and make a judgment as to where I think the child is. Again, that shows us a lozenge shape with grey corners until I save, and then that grade overwrites that. So I can do a termly summative judgment out of here using a grade system which Capita has set up. These can be customized to a certain extent. So, for example, where we've got the MS, D, and E here, we can change that to GDS, EXP, WTS, WB, if that were more suitable. And the same for the grades here. We can set these up to be 2 GDS, 2 EXP, 2 S, whatever we really want to do in the system. So, the programs of study, they also have a series of inbuilt reports which pull the data out of the system and allow you to do some analysis of that. Things like summative attainment and summative progress. With summative attainment, we'll look at these grades and will tell me how many children I've got working in each category. Summative progress, we'll compare that to where they were, and where there's a 1 step from a 2E to a 2D, I'll identify how many children have made 1 step of progress, 2 steps of progress as we go through. The formative attainment will look at how many children have achieved which grade within each of the elements, and then we'll look at the formative progress is the percentages of the curriculum which have been covered at secure or higher at each assessment point. There are other things which I can do. I can revisit, I can show previous years statements. I can also look at next year's. I can add in additional data such as pupil premium information, SEN information to add those on. And I can also set up school targets. So if we only wanted to make sure that staff were assessing the first 5 of these, I'm just going to that yellow row in the table, setting them all up, the first 5 elements to be assessed in term 1, save that, and that will now allow me to just take percentages based on those aspects which I've selected. So we can add in the school expectations. Now we've changed it so that our top student, Jessica, is now secure or better in 80% of the things which we've had to put on, had them to assess during this term. In terms of subjects, you've got everything you would expect. You've got your English reading, writing, spoken language, math, science, and you have all the foundation subjects which also are in there. And all of those have the various statements and various strands which you would expect to see for that year group. And I always manage to choose the wrong one for the year group when I demonstrate. But we'd be able to pull up all of those. So that's formative assessment. As I said, it's part of your package. It's something which all schools should have. It gets updated in terms of the reports when there's a SIMS upgrade. The other side is purely doing summative assessment. So having worked with a lot of schools over the last, well, how many years I've been at SCOMIS, we've seen moving towards formative and away from formative. And at the moment, a lot of our schools are purely putting it in a summative judgment, say 3 times a year, at the end of a term. Some schools doing 6 times a year where they want to do a particular focus. So within the system, there are what I would say are more traditional mark sheets, things which you might be used to from using other systems. It very much looks like a mark book where we will have, for example, the children's names, a variety of columns, and a place to enter grades. So I'll just take you through what we've got here. I'll just zoom this so it just comes out a little bit. We've got our children's names down the left-hand side in the system, and each of these is a hyperlink into the child's record, so we can have a look at more information about the child. I mentioned earlier the contextual data. We're logged into SIMS, so it's pulling this data from the children's records. So we know who has a special need, who's English additional language, we know gender, we know whether they're pupil premium or not, and we've got an up-to-date version of their attendance. So we can actually pick up children who are, say, below 90% attendance. All of these, if you see as I go into the column heading, we can see a little filter symbol appears in the top of the box. And that's purely allows me to apply a filter. So if I just wanted to look at any of our English additional language children, and click on the filter, click yes, and my mark sheet narrows down to the English additional language children. So I can filter on any of those criteria. Just going to go into the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and there's a little red cross there, which allows me to remove all my filters. It is possible to double up on filters. So if I wanted to know all boys who were English additional language, again, that will do the filtering for me so that I can actually have a double filter going on. In terms of the next columns, we're looking at historical statutory data. So unfortunately, I don't seem to have the early years for my year 6 on this mark sheet, but because this is a maths mark sheet, it would be pulling through their numbers, shape, space and measure, and whether they had an overall good level of development at early years. But because they're Key Stage 2, it's also pulled through their Key Stage 1 teacher assessment, their statutory data, which is going through. And as you can see, I've already actually completed my autumn term data. So I'm just going to enter some marks now for spring. I can do a right click again. I prefer right clicking. It means I don't have to type a grade in. And I'm going to select grade for cell. Now, the grades here, 1, 2, 3, 4, were purely what one of the organisations I was working with wanted. This could be anything you like and could have as many layers as you like. So it could go from, say, 1 emerging up to 6 at greater depth with the 24 steps in between. It could go from greater depth to expected to working towards to working below to working 1 year below, working 2 years below. So you could have your own paradigm of how you're going to assess the children within, and that is totally bespoke to a trust or to a school and can basically reflect your assessment policy. So we have any number of versions of that with all the schools we're working through. Again, I'm just going to input my grades. I'm just going to start double clicking to put in a grade. And as I type, as you can see, the grades are going in. When I save, a little formula takes place and is doing some color coding. Now, again, the color coding really can reflect what the school policy is. Whether you want it to color code just purely on a certain grade being a certain color, whether you want to compare that as a progress from a grade from the previous year, or whether, as in the system we've got actually on the screen, this is actually looking back at their key stage data. And a child who was expected at key stage 1 should be either a 2 or hopefully a 1 rather than dropping back. So let me just go and again do a filter on a previous grade this time. I want to look at my children who are greater depth at key stage 1. Now, as long as they get a 1, the system's going to green light them as being fine. But when I put in a lower grade, such as a 2 or a 3, when the calculation takes place, it's going to say, well, these were children who were greater depth. Using the assessment system we've set up, you would expect them to be on track for greater depth, whereas actually you've said they're only on track for expected. So it's doing a little bit of color coding as to show where those children are. The other thing we've got here is some Puma scores. So using the Puma tests to take a standardized score in, and this will color code as well as the data goes in. When we save, it will calculate, and it's going to color in blue for the high achievers, green for, again, the people who are achieving fairly well. Let's just put in another grade. So if we put in something like 100 and 108 and calculate, that should come in. Save that. So we're looking at the color coding on the grades, and that was based on some Puma boundaries which came up. But that would work with Accelerated Reader, whichever system our schools are using. It will take in a grade, and it would take in other things as well. So as well as just having the grades which we've got here, we could also take in an age. So for a reading age or a spelling age or a writing age, it could take in a decimal mark or a percentage. And it can take in a full comment. So we could add in a comments box, which would take up to about 200 words in terms of a comment on their ability. In terms of analysing this data, if I just right-click on a column heading, as a class teacher, I can very quickly see a grade distribution. I'm just going to switch that to the count of students, but obviously it does percentage and count. So it does both a number of children working at each grade, each level, 5 working at greater depth, 19 working at the expected age-related standard, and that will give me a cumulative frequency of 24 children working at age-related or better as we go through. So as a class teacher, I can do a grade distribution on my own list. I can also pop on a little a summary row at the bottom, and the summary row at the bottom is there to pull through the average grade or the mean grade, mean and median grades of what's going on in the system. And I can also decide I want to order it. So if I want to order this column descending, so I have my high achievers at the top in the Puma test and just cross match that with their performance, I can. So there's a lot of things I can do relating to the data just on a mark sheet. So as a classroom teacher, I really should be able to tell the story of who's achieved, who hasn't achieved, what their previous performance is, cross-match to things like attendance, know who my special needs pupils are and what they've done from the mark sheet. And as I said, oh, didn't mean to close that down. I'm just going to pull that up again. If I click on a child's name, it will actually open up the child's record, so I can have a look in more detail at that particular child and see if there are any other factors coming through which might relate to what they've been doing. So we've got no problem with attendance here. I can see some old grades coming through for reading, writing and maths, where they were secure in year 4. We can choose up to 6 key performance indicator grades from the assessment system to go through here. So typically, if it was a year 2 student, we would have their reading, writing and numbers from early years. We might then have their phonics score, and we might have whether they were great adept at early years or not. For Key Stage 2 children, we would probably pick up the Key Stage 1 teacher assessment grades, and then maybe their current attainment in each of those. So that's the first phase, that's the input phase, and it's also the first bit of the analysis as a class teacher, being able to tell the story about my group. I'm then going to move on to the tracking grids, which pull the data together in a way which enables us to have more of a discussion in terms of progress. So again, these are tools which are built in. I'm just going to pick up one I prepared earlier, which is my Key Stage 1 against current. I'm just going to click populate. And this is my year 6 group. So I've just been looking at the mark sheets, and I have been able to compare what they did at Key Stage 1 with what they're doing now. But this presents it more as a little transition matrix. So if I just took the EXS, the expected at Key Stage 1, these children had a judgment of expected at Key Stage 1. And now we can see that Harvey has actually made excellent progress. Is now being said that he's on track for greater depth. Big majority of that cohort, that mini cohort within my class, is exactly where I want them to be, as expected. They're working at age-related expectations. Might be beginning to get a little bit worried about these children. Need to think about how I can move them up to a 2, where their strengths and weaknesses are. And on the left-hand side, little Johnny seems to have fallen quite a bit behind where I'd expect him to be based on his Key Stage 1 performance. So now we can have a discussion about Johnny. Again, as I hover over, you can see that's a hyperlink, so I could open up his record, see if there are any other factors involved there. And if I want to switch to, say, reading, I just can change both axes, just change the top axes, just going to change the vertical axis, repopulate it, and now I've got the same grid for reading. So I've got reading, writing and maths on the same grid to look at performance between Key Stage 1 and where they are now. And we can do that from any stage. I've built the grids, which I won't show now, for early years against current. I will show overview of attainment. So if you're looking at building up a whole school picture of where pupils are, now unfortunately I've only input the year 6 data at the moment. So there's the year 6 data. There's those children again. That's the latest judgment from the teachers where they were. This will build up to be a picture of the whole school at any one stage, but also as the person responsible for looking at Pupil Premium funding, or if I'm the SENCO, I can actually filter this whole little grid by special needs children, so I can get a picture of what the special needs picture is across the whole school in terms of the latest attainment, and that just allows us to see that in one easy screen. Where we've got tests, results or scores, we can also compare those scores to our performance. So let's take the reading. Let's take the latest, oops, I didn't want to do that. The latest PIRA scores. And again, I'm just going to pull up my year group 6. I could be doing this just for my registration group as a class teacher. I'm going to populate that, and now we can see that we've grouped the PIRA scores into bands, and then the bands are relating to the teacher grades. So of my children who were getting between 100 and 114, I've actually judged that they're on track for greater depth, although their latest test result might not actually seem to bear that out. So again, it enables a comparison between teacher judgment and something which might have been more formally assessed within a test. And again, once you've got these grids up, these are saved on the right hand side, so I can access those at any stage. We can also, as I said, use the system to do other things. I talked about effort grades earlier on. School I've been working with has a sort of pastoral judgment where they're looking at what they call the 6 R's, and the 6 R's being, I always get this wrong, reasoning, reflection, resilience, resourcefulness, respect, and responsibility. So it's possible for us to input into the system things which are not purely academic judgment. So this is going cross-curricular, it's looking at the whole picture of the child, and we're just using an A, B, C, D grades which are set in there. On the right-hand side, we're then doing an average grade across those. We're putting that into the system. So again, we can use that in some comparisons. We can pick up children who aren't doing what we would like them to do across those areas. And if I pop back to my tracking grid area, I can pull up an attitude grid and just populate that with the children to see who might need some help in particular areas of our more pastoral support. In terms of, here we might want to work with Charlotte on her resilience, what resilience that would be defined in our document more than being just here. Okay, I'm just going to pop back onto my home page in Sims. I'm a head teacher in this nominal school, so I've actually got some of that data being pushed to me rather than having to go and look for it. So as well as having attendance and behaviour and achievements all being pushed to my homepage, so I can quickly see that we're rewarding the positive things we want, I can also have these little tiny grids on my screen which are showing, again, summarising the data in this mark sheet. So we're still looking back at the data which the teachers put in that one time in the mark sheet. This one, if I just go large with it, I'm afraid it still won't be very large on your screens, just gives me a very quick look at the number of children working within each of our scoring bands. So 1 is the greater depth, 2 is the expected. So I immediately see that I've got a child here who's working way below in maths. Double click on that and it will take me into the child's name. Double click on Alice in there and it will take me a step further into a record, so I can see if there's anything else going on which I need to know about. But it's delivering that data to my desktop, so as soon as the grades are going into the teachers' mark sheets, the other parts of the system are updated. I'll just show this one. I had that transition grid just now, which was showing the children's names against their previous Key Stage 1 performance. This is exactly the same grid, but this time I've just replaced it with percentages so that I can see the number of children working in a particular area and the percentage who are working above and below where they should be. So here again, I've got my 25% of children who are greater depth are not where we'd like them to be at the moment. They're not on track for greater depth, but clicking into that will tell me that it's just actually one child because of the numbers involved in just looking at this one small user group, year group. And on the right hand side, I've got another grid looking at that pastoral side. So again, I can look at anything which we're recording in our sim system to the same extent. I can then take that a little bit further, but I'm going to just do that in a PowerPoint purely because I knew I'd begin to get towards the end of the time. So I'm just going to pop through these slides until I get to here. and talk about how we can pull this out for our governors. Within Sims, there's a tool called Discover. It's a graphical analysis tool. It enables us to do very quick and easy charts of information from within Sims. So here we've got a tracking progress, the reading tracking progress little graph. So this is looking at where they were each term through the period of time they've been assessed, and it plots the progress of the whole cohort. I could then drop onto that, say a Pupil Premium group. I could drop onto that the girls, the boys, and see what line that plots for them. We can also build things like they're called stacked bars. So this is from a school using a more developed grade system of having the 3 grades within each year group. So 4 secure, 4 developing, 4 emerging, or a child might be working at a level in the year below. And this just allows us to see those children in one area, the number of children we've got working within each of those boundaries. The way Discover works is it allows you also to blend graphs together. So from this graph, I can actually blend the top 3 blue boxes together and produce a Venn diagram of children who are working at Secure in all of the subjects. So the orange circle is maths, green writing, blue reading. So I can see in the middle of there, at the center of the chart, I've got the 4 children who are working at Secure in all 3 areas. And then as we move out, we've got to the 2 areas and the children, 3 children who are working at Secure in maths, but not in reading and writing. Unfortunately, because this is a PowerPoint slide rather than the live Discover, I can't now click on this, whereas if I clicked on these 3, I would get a little pop-up which would show me the children's names. And the same with any segment of any chart in Discover, you can click to reveal who the students are sitting behind there. But in terms of exporting this, it's a very simple export from Discover to copy a particular chart and to paste it into a report to governors for their analysis, so that they can begin to challenge where you need to be in terms of your data. It's also possible to take that data out and present it through an Excel report. So we've written a large number of Excel reports for people, for schools and for trusts, where what we want to bring out is a summary of that data in terms of numbers and percentages. Here we've replaced the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 with the greater depth, secure, developing, emerging. That might also be replacing a GDS or a 6G in the 6. It calculates and pulls out the data and then provides us with an overview in terms of the percentages of children working within each of those ability bands. In terms of reporting to parents, Sims is able to collate all of that together and produce a parental report. So if you wanted to push out a report at the end of each term or just at the end of the summer, it will pull from the mark sheets the grade or the description associated with the grade. So here the teachers would have been putting in a G or a D or an S or an E, but we're actually pulling through the description into the report to parents. We've obviously pulled through a photo and the child's name. We've then pulled through some comments. So we would have had a comment box on our report to be able to, on our mark sheet, to type in a comment, a free text comment to go on in the report. And again, because we've been doing this in Sims, we've pulled through the attendance and we've pulled through the class teachers' names at the bottom. So from the mark sheet and the data going into the mark sheet, this report would run with a click, then be able to either print it out or in association with other bits of software, such as Sims in Touch or Sims Parent app or some of the other parental communication tools on the market. This might be sent home as a PDF file to an app or via email, or it could be printed out on paper and through the traditional sort of child's book bag. We can also do some much more complex reports based on the termly data, which we've talked about already. But this is an example of the type of report which we've been doing for schools. This actually happens to be a statutory one CAPTA produced to analyse the good level of development for early years. And again, left-hand side, we have all the cohorts which schools tend to be interested in. It's pulling through the data. This is pulling out the data from the key stage wizard to return your early years foundation stage profile, and it does the calculation and manipulation of the data so that we can see what's going on in terms of the system, in terms of how many children we've got. CAPTA provide this. It's part of the standard offering and can be run after each of the assessment periods, and they will update with the correct national data each time that data is available. So just a close-up. They also provide a number of reports which will do transition from early years to key stage 1, and there are also some standard discovered charts which you can run again against the statutory data which you're collecting through the various key stage wizards in SIMS. And that's just an example of the key stage 2 report which you can run out of SIMS and which will again analyse all the data against the expected standard and the higher standard for everything being assessed at key stage 2. Finally, we've just launched this product with a series of multi-academy trusts. We can now actually aggregate data from across a group of schools. There is a caveat on that for termly data, it does need to be in the same format across those schools. But for the statutory assessments, we can pull that data out of the system from all schools and aggregate it into a dashboard which can be seen by people with responsibility for school improvement across the trust. So we can make that available for a number of people to look at patterns of data across all those schools. There is another webinar on that on our Multi-Academy Trust reporting service, which my colleague Michael has already presented a couple of times, and I think there's another version of it coming up next week. If not, there is a recording available for you to have a look at that to see what's available. So where do we come in as SCOMIS? As I said, no software charges for any of the things that you've seen which sit inside SIMS. The aggregated reporting does have a charge, which we can discuss with you if required. We can run training. Traditionally, this would have been a classroom course, but we could run some training through something such as Teams to take you through into detail how to set up your assessment, how to work on the programs of study. We can do teacher training in a twilight session. We could provide on-site consultancy where we can come out and work with you at the school and show you how to build your own bespoke assessment system, how to manipulate it, how to add grades, how to design your own set of grades for use within the system. Or we can actually do it for you. You can commission us to say, this is what we'd want. We would like these grades and we'd like to assess these subjects this number of times a year. And we can work with you on that and build it for you and then present it to you. So you end up with the system which you've designed and which you can use to assess your pupils throughout the year. And obviously that will roll over each year. It will take in the registration groups you've got, the classes you've got in your system. And again, just to repeat, those are the things I said at the beginning. It's available with that out-of-the-box contextual summative data, formative data, or we can build your summative out-of-the-box. So I've just about come to the end of my time. I meant to leave a little bit more time. I don't know if there are any questions which you could put in the chat if you wanted to put something into the conversation, I can try and answer that. But if you have any questions about that and want to know a little bit more, ring and ask to have an account meeting. Each school does have a designated account manager who's there to provide you with information about our services and how you can help you and what we can do, what you might need to do. So you can either just go onto our website, you can log a call on our service desk on the number which is on the screen. I'm happy to take an email and then refer on to your account manager to have that first meeting, or indeed if you feel that you'd like to get involved with that, I can either speak with you or my colleague Gary, who also works heavily in the assessment area, would be very happy to have a chat with you and go into more depths about things which you would like to do within your school. So that's been you will get a link to the presentation. So it has been recorded, hopefully, as long as I hit the button correctly. It will be recorded. We might just do a little bit of tidying up of the recording, and then you will get sent a link to it where you can watch it and review what I've done. I will probably not be watching it, as I dislike the sound of my own voice when I hear it back. Okay, so if there are any questions, please come back. Are there any tutorial videos we can watch on specifics? Within the Sims software, yes. If you are in your Sims software, let me just come out of this and just pop back into Sims. In the documentation center, which is accessed from your home page in Sims, there will be a number of different things you can access. There are handbooks, some of these extremely large, which will take you through in great detail everything you need to know about the assessment. There are tutorials, and these are little video tutorials which Capita have produced to take you through doing various parts of the system. There is also going to be learning course which my colleague has put together on assessment. That of course would be a chargeable way, and there are also quick reference sheets which are very quick 1 or 2 page documents just to take you through a simple aspect of there. Okay, so I've just got a couple of questions coming through. I'm just having to peer at my screen. So right, first, how do I get to documentation? Documentation is on the home page. So once you're logged into Sims, just go up to the top right-hand corner of your home page and click on the documentation link, and that's where that is. And then you wouldn't have an assessment tab there. You would need to go into something like handbooks or tutorials or a quick reference sheet to pick up things on assessment. How is it to suck data from other systems? If the other system can output to an Excel file, there is a simple import routine which allows us to pull that data in. And there's just a little bit of mapping to do when you do the import. You import the data, map it to say, so what this comes out of, let's say it came out of Puma as this column, map it to it, and you then bring that in. It can be a CSV file or an XML file. It's also possible to get things like statutory data from CTF files, so you've got everything in there. We've managed to get things in from a huge variety of systems for schools. But I say, if anyone needs more information or would like to have either a phone conversation or a virtual meeting with their account manager, just please let us know, and we're happy to have further discussions with you. Okay, if the questions, I will just leave this up for a little bit. I will pop the SCOMIS number back up on the board, so you can log a call and ask to speak to your account manager. If you would like to, you can email me direct and I'll pass it on with you. Otherwise, thank you for attending and giving up your time this afternoon. And hopefully we can be of assistance in the future. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm going to end the meeting now. Thank you for attending.